morning. Welcome to Money Beat. I'm Paul Vigna. By now, of course, I'm sure you've seen the tweet. Let's call it the tweet heard around the world, right? Twitter last night announcing on their own service that they're kicking off another, they're looking to go IPO. They made a filing. Now, Wall Street gearing up. You can see it right there. They submitted the S1. Wall Street gearing up for another major high-profile, big honkin' IPO, the kind of thing that they love, kind of thing that gets on the front page of the New York Post. You look at that. Look at the stocks. Let's take a look at some of the stocks, Facebook, LinkedIn, some of the social media stocks, see how they're doing. You can see Facebook down a little bit today, not doing, but look, it's at 44 over that IPO price. LinkedIn has had a great run down today, but up at $249. Now, everyone knows Twitter. Everyone loves a big IPO. But the last big IPO, Teles Demos, my guest here on the show today, it didn't go so well.
Yeah, Facebook's IPO obviously got off to a rough start. Like you said, it's now trading actually above its all-time high.
Right.
But got off to a rough beginning in life. It had a couple of big issues. Number one, some people point to the fact that they raised the price and increased the size of what was already a gigantic IPO, the biggest U.S. tech IPO ever.
Right. They
They raised $16 billion. Did they push it a little too far and kind of, convince people that, why are they trying to sell so much? What do they know that we don't? Should we sell? And then, of course, it was hit by the NASDAQ technical glitch that delayed the opening and trading and left some people not knowing whether they owned the stock or they didn't. So, it got off to a pretty rough start in life, got some bad press off the bat.
Now, obviously, Twitter can't control what happens on the stock exchange on any given day. They're not that powerful. But they can, I would imagine they can look at what Facebook did and draw some lessons for that as they move forward.
Yeah, they're definitely looking at that, and they're in a slightly different position because Facebook's valuation was, about $100 billion when it went public.
Right.
Twitter right now, has been valued, around $10 billion. Even if they push that, say, to 20 or something, we're still talking about an IPO that's dramatically smaller, and that actually makes a big difference in kind of how these things work. When you're trying to sell $16 billion worth of stock, even if it's the most exciting company in the world,
right,
you've got to end up going not to the person, the guy who loves it the most, the guy who loves it the second most, the woman who loves it the third most, but then people who maybe are kind of on the fence about it. When you're only trying to sell $2 billion worth of stock, say that just as a guideline, right? If Twitter sells about 20% of its valuation to the public, $2 billion worth of stock isn't that much for a company this exciting. So it might be a totally different dynamic where, you might see that kind of classic pop on the first day. It really depends on kind of how Twitter wants to play it. Do they want to get the great pop and get the big,
right,
kind of successful, get on the front page of the Post as this giant success? Or do they maybe want to, kind of take the Facebook approach and say, look, we want to get as much money as we can out of the street?
Well, and that's the thing about it. Look, I want to hold up the front page of the Post. It made the front page of the Post. I mean, a lot of people know this service. A lot of people are going to be excited about it. Wall Street loves these things. You get a lot of hype. You get people interested in the market, people interested in buying not just Twitter's IPO, but other stock. Is there a risk that they take this thing and they just run with it too far?
I mean, I think Twitter faces the same questions that Facebook did at its IPO. What's the real long-term monetization? What's the real business? What are they really selling? Could somebody else start a competing service? Things like that. Right now they're an ad-supported company. Not everybody loves that business model. So right. I think that there is definitely, if you push it too far, there will start to be some skeptics that push back and say, wait a second, maybe this isn't the greatest thing since sliced bread.
Right, and
yeah.
You look here, you can see this is their estimated ad revenue. Talk about their ad, being an ad-generated business. Those are not huge numbers. Those are not insane numbers. Right now they're well under $1 billion in revenue.
Yeah.
The questions about how much they can grow the business, what they can do with the business. I mean, those little supported ads, those aren't. They have a very small space for advertisers to work with. That's got to be limiting in some way.
Well, I think, I definitely think that I'm sure that they have all kinds of answers and plans, and they have, I'm sure that when the filing finally is public, we'll see all the different ways that they are taking money out of that business. And I just think that they face a different task than Facebook. Like I said, because the deal is that much smaller, because they're kind of a smaller, faster growing company than Facebook was when they went public. I mean, Facebook was a very mature, S&P 500 kind of company when they came out, S&P 100 company, maybe some, and so so whereas Twitter is still a little bit more like a classic tech IPO, a little bit closer to their founding, maybe still in the kind of like thrilling kind of growth phase of the business where people don't necessarily need those answers because they think, okay, the monetization is still to come. And it really just depends in some ways on how you sell the business. I mean, look at Amazon. Amazon still hasn't turned out the profit spigot, really. They're still...
But people love them.
But people love that stock because they think, you know what, at some point, they're just going to start making massive amounts of money. So so Twitter could benefit from that, too.
All right, tell us. Thanks a lot. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. I know you're busy working on this one today.
Thanks, Paul.